Imagine stepping out your front door on an ordinary morning, shoes scuffing lightly over familiar pavement, never suspecting the layers of forgotten worlds just beneath your feet. Picture streets that hum quietly with passing cars and bicycles, while far below, ancient walkways slumber in perfect darkness, echoing with memories of voices long stilled. In nearly every old city, there rests an unseen tapestry of the past. Beneath the modern shopfronts and tidy parks lie older streets, hidden rooms, vaulted cellars, and tired chambers left behind by centuries of rebuilding. These places wait in the hush beneath our bustling lives, content to remain unseen, yet always there. As we drift into this quiet exploration together, allow yourself to breathe a little slower. Feel the gentle weight of history pressing softly from every side, as if time itself were a thick, comforting blanket. There is nothing to solve here, no mystery demanding, haste only the steady rhythm of stories that once were, whispered slowly to ease you toward rest. Tonight we will meander through these underground cities, traveling from one hidden layer to another, unhurried and calm. We'll wander through dim stone tunnels beneath Naples, slip beneath the streets of Edinburgh, stand quietly in the cool silence under Istanbul. We'll pause to consider the humble daily lives once led there, the cooking fires, the laughter, the muted sorrows. So settle in. Let your mind picture gentle torchlight brushing across old bricks, the faint scent of damp earth and cool stone. With each slow breath, imagine descending a narrow staircase into shadows that hold countless footsteps. These stories are patient. They have waited for centuries. They are happy to wait for you too. We begin under the crowded rooftops of Naples, Italy. Above, Vespas buzz along narrow streets, their tires skimming past stalls heavy with bright citrus and fragrant herbs. Vendors call out to neighbors. Laundry flutters overhead like soft banners. It is a city bursting with life. Yet only steps away, tucked behind quiet doors and down hidden stairwells, yawns an ancient world that knows none of this urgency. Just beneath the clamorous neighborhoods, hollowed from volcanic stone, lies a network of tunnels and chambers. These spaces first cradled life 2,000 years ago, hewn by Greeks and expanded by Romans who found the soft, tough rock ideal for carving. They dug quarries to build temples and theaters, carving great blocks that would rise into sunlit marvels. But what they left behind underground was equally profound, a labyrinth of empty veins waiting patiently beneath the city's skin. Imagine walking there now. The air cools at once, brushing your cheeks with gentle dampness. Each exhale seems to vanish more quickly in this underground hush. The walls glow with a mellow ochre, lit by the soft flicker of lamps set low along the passages. Underfoot, the ground is slightly uneven, echoing with the faint memory of carts and sandals that once passed here daily. Some of these cavernous rooms became humble storerooms for olives and wine, their barrels lined neatly along the walls. Others held workshops where faint hammer strikes once rang out. Now only silence lingers, so complete it almost seems to breathe. You might stand quietly in one of these old vaults, hand resting on cool stone, feeling the ghost of the earth's heartbeat beneath your palm. In this stillness, it is easy to picture a woman descending these steps centuries ago, lantern in hand, perhaps balancing a basket of fresh bread on her hip. Her steps would have been careful on the worn stones, her breath steady in the chill. This was simply her daily path, as ordinary to her as a modern elevator ride is to us, yet it feels impossibly distant, almost tender in its simplicity. Let yourself drift in this picture for a while. In the dark beneath Naples, time folds softly, and the world above seems a gentle dream. Here history lingers close, not demanding to be remembered, only content to be felt. Now let us wander northward to the damp, story-laden underbelly of Edinburgh. Above, the Royal Mile hums with tourists. Shopkeepers sweep their thresholds, and distant bagpipes carry through the chilly Scottish air. But under these cobbled lanes lies a hidden warren of closes and chambers, where life once pressed on in shadow. Centuries ago, Edinburgh grew so crowded that its inhabitants built upward in narrow, towering tenements. As space grew scarce, older streets and alleys were slowly buried beneath new construction, enclosed under arches and heavy stones. The result was a series of sunken closes, small alleyways and courtyards locked away from daylight, where families continued to live and trade despite the gloom. I imagine stepping through a narrow doorway off a bustling street and beginning your descent. The air changes almost at once, growing damp and tinged with something faintly sour, like old wood and rain-soaked cloth. The stone stairs dip unevenly, worn by countless feet. As you reach the bottom, the close opens before you, walls pressing close on either side, windows black with soot and long sealed. Here, life was once cramped and dim. Children played in puddles that never quite dried, laughter and soft bickering echoing strangely off the walls. Vendors hawked meat pies and tallow candles from crooked tables. Housewives leaned from upper windows to chat or scold, their voices threading together in a low, ceaseless murmur that filled the twilight space. It is easy to imagine the steady clatter of wooden pails as water was drawn up from deep, shared wells, or the faint creak of carts delivering sacks of grain. Lantern light pooled in shallow puddles, making little glowing mirrors that trembled when footsteps passed. If you pause in this hush, perhaps you can sense it, the layers of human breath and hope that once saturated these stones. Though long abandoned, these closes cradle the memory of everyday struggles and small joys, sheltered far beneath the bright streets that now stride confidently overhead. And so we stand quietly together, listening for the whispers of old Edinburgh, letting the cool air wrap around us like a gentle, familiar shawl. In this place, time does not hurry. It rests and waits and welcomes you to linger just a little longer. Far to the east, across continents and seas, lies Istanbul, a city so rich in layers that it seems almost alive with memory. Here, history does not merely rest beneath the streets. It weaves through every courtyard and arches beneath every footstep. Above, the city bursts with colors and calls to prayer. Market stalls overflowing with spices, bright silks, hammered copper. Yet under this vibrant dance waits an older, cooler realm. Beneath Istanbul lies an intricate network of cisterns, carved and built over centuries to slake the city's great thirst. The most famous is the Basilica Cistern, a vast echoing hall supported by hundreds of marble columns. But there are countless smaller chambers, some yet unmapped, hidden quietly beneath houses and cafes, their still waters undisturbed for centuries. Picture stepping through a humble wooden door at street level, following a narrow staircase downward as the air turns moist and chill. Your lantern throws soft rings of gold across damp walls. A final step, and you find yourself standing at the edge of silent, black water stretching away into darkness, pillars rising like ghostly trees, into a ceiling lost in shadow. The surface of the water is perfectly still, reflecting your light with gentle precision. Somewhere far off, a single droplet falls, sending ripples that glide outward in widening circles, touching each pillar in turn. The quiet is so deep it seems to press against your skin. Long ago, workers would have moved carefully through these spaces with torches and buckets, maintaining the lifeblood of the city above. You might imagine the soft lapping of water against small wooden boats, the hushed voices of men testing the ropes that lowered clay jars to fill. Pause here. Feel the hush of Istanbul's underworld, the cool breath of water and stone. Above, the world hurries on with its bargains and songs, but here beneath the ancient city, the past lingers in patient stillness, content to cradle secrets for yet another 100 years. Let us journey now to Paris, where even the bustling elegance of broad avenues and glowing cafes rests atop a deep, shadowed memory. Beneath the charm of flower stalls and clinking glasses, Paris shelters miles of silent corridors, the catacombs quietly holding the remains of millions. Long ago, the limestone quarries beneath the city were dug to provide the very stone that built her grand facades. Over centuries, these quarries spread outward like the roots of an ancient tree, winding and turning in countless paths. By the late 18th century, as Paris struggled with overflowing cemeteries, these old tunnels became a resting place for the bones of the city's dead. Imagine descending a spiral staircase of cold, worn stone, feeling the slight tremor of history underfoot. Each turn of the stair drops you deeper into a cool embrace. At last you step into a low corridor lined with bones, carefully stacked in solemn walls, femurs, skulls, the pale architecture of countless lives. Lantern light softens these shapes, turning the stark geometry of death into something almost gentle. You can nearly hear the soft shuffle of old workers carrying lanterns and wheelbarrows, murmuring to one another as they perform this quiet, respectful labor. Pause here and breathe. Notice how the air seems faintly sweet, tinged with limestone and the memory of old candles. Far from being grim, this place feels calm, as if the city itself whispers gratitude to those who came before. Above, Paris laughs and weeps, dines and dreams. Lovers stroll arm in arm across moonlit bridges, unaware that countless silent witnesses rest in orderly slumber just beneath their feet. And perhaps that is, as it should be, a gentle layering of life upon life, all held tenderly by the earth. Now let us return to Naples, drifting deeper into the quiet spaces that once cradled ordinary lives. Beyond the broad chambers where barrels once lined the walls, there stretched narrow passageways, branching off like slender veins. These smaller tunnels were not grand or impressive, merely functional, intimate spaces that saw the rhythm of humble, daily routines. Imagine a family living here centuries ago, when war or plague drove people below ground for safety. Their modest household might have been reduced to a single vaulted room, carved from the tuff, lit by the soft glow of oil lamps. The flickering light would dance across rough walls, catching on bundles of herbs hung to dry, or the simple pottery stacked neatly against a corner. Picture the mother rising early to stir a pot over a small hearth, the faint aroma of lentils or onions curling up into the cool air. Her hands are steady, her movements practiced. She has done this every morning for years. A little boy sleeps nearby on a straw mat, his breath soft, fingers curled loosely as he dreams. Now and then footsteps echo in the hall beyond, the neighbor returning from fetching water, or perhaps a cousin stopping by with a bundle of firewood. Voices drift through the stone, low and unhurried, punctuated by small laughter that warms the space more than any hearth could. It is a hard life, certainly. The walls are damp, and fresh air scarce. Illness passes quickly through such close quarters, and the days are shaped by quiet endurance. Yet in these simple routines, stirring the pot, smoothing the child's hair, sharing a loaf of bread, there is a tenderness that belongs wholly to human life. Even carved deep beneath the bustling streets, their days were filled with the same small hopes and cares that still stir hearts above ground. Pause here with them a moment longer. Feel the closeness of the stone walls, the soft glow of the lamp, the faint, comforting clutter of humble living. In this hidden world, time slows to the gentle beat of daily chores, and nothing demands haste. Beneath Edinburgh's crowded lanes, daily life in the shadowed closes was an exercise in quiet perseverance. Families dwelled here in dim rooms that opened directly onto narrow alleyways, where sunlight struggled to reach and the damp never fully left the stones. Imagine a modest dwelling tucked along one such sunken close, a single room where 5 or 6 souls made their lives together. A small hearth smoked lazily in one corner, the scent of peat and old wool mingling in the cool air. A rough wooden table stood at the center, scarred by countless knives and elbows, around which life's small dramas unfolded. Picture a father returning home at dusk, shoulders stooped from a day spent hauling barrels or swinging a mason's hammer. He sets down his tools with a soft clatter, then takes a seat beside his children. Perhaps he breaks into a thin smile as one proudly recites lines from a psalter, voice high and earnest. Across the table, a mother spoons out a modest stew, her motions slow, savoring the few moments of calm. Outside, beyond their battered door, the close still murmurs with life. A vendor calls out his wares: salted fish, a few pints of ale. Somewhere up the alley a dog barks once, then falls quiet. Laundry strung between windows drips steadily into the narrow gutter, each drop landing with a faint, rhythmic patter that might soothe a weary child to sleep. Let yourself feel the faint draft curling around your ankles. Hear the low creak of timbers overhead as someone walks across the floor above. Lean into this scene for a while. Here beneath Edinburgh's grand facades, life was not grand at all. It was humble, sometimes harsh, but laced through with small tendernesses that gave these shadowed days their quiet dignity. Deep under Istanbul, in chambers carved to cradle the city's lifeblood, humble lives also found their rhythm. Beyond the wide cisterns that mirrored rows of solemn columns lay smaller, less ornate spacious storage cellars and workshops pressed into the damp earth. Here men labored daily in the cool shadow to keep the water flowing, their quiet toil as vital to the city above as any sultan's decree. Imagine a small torch-lit chamber where 2 workers pause to mend a cracked clay pipe. One kneels close, his hands steady as he fits the pieces together, while the other holds a guttering lantern that throws warm, trembling light across their faces. Tools lie scattered on a cloth beside them, a curved knife, a wooden mallet, a coil of rope darkened by use. The air is rich with the scent of wet stone and faint minerals leached from the water itself. Somewhere down the passage you can hear the soft echo of dripping, each drop landing in a shallow pool with a gentle, deliberate plink. It's a sound so regular it might be mistaken for breath. Above them the city teems with noise and sun. Merchants haggle in crowded markets. Children chase each other past bright stalls heaped with figs and pomegranates. But here, beneath thick layers of stone, the men speak little. When they do, it is in low voices, words rolling slowly through the cavern like small boats on still water. Pause here with them. Feel the weight of the ground above, the slow patience of their careful hands. Even in these dark, damp corners, life unfolds with small hopes. A well-mended pipe, a safely stored amphora, a quiet nod that the day's work is done. This, too, is history's gentle heartbeat, hidden just beneath the bright swirl of Istanbul's streets. In Paris, beneath the graceful boulevards and sunlit cafes, life once persisted, even in the hushed corridors of the catacombs. Though we often think of these passages as places only for the dead, there were times when the living ventured here for reasons both practical and tender. Imagine a small party of workers descending together by lamplight, their boots sending soft echoes down the curling stone stairs. At the bottom they pause to adjust the weight of baskets slung over their shoulders, filled with tools, fresh candles, or bread wrapped in cloth. These men were caretakers of the ossuaries, tending to the silent city beneath the living one. Watch them move carefully through the lantern-lit gloom, the gentle light catching on skulls stacked with eerie precision. Their breath rises faintly in the cool air, mingling with the faint, mineral scent that always hangs here, part damp rock, part the ghost of ancient soil. Perhaps at midday they gather in a small alcove set off from the main corridor to rest and share a meal. One unwraps a crust of bread, another slices a bit of cheese, and together they speak in quiet tones, their voices lowered out of respect, or perhaps instinctively subdued by the solemn surroundings. They might share a small laugh, a shrug about a minor mishap, a dropped hammer, a stubbed toe on an unseen stone. Outside, the city thrums with life. Carriages rattle over cobblestones, distant bells mark the hours, lovers stroll arm in arm beneath flowering chestnuts. Yet down here, beneath all that brightness, these simple workers tend their careful duties, honoring the silent company around them with small gestures of diligence and quiet fellowship. Stay here a moment longer. Let the hush of this place settle around you like a soft cloak, cool and steady. In these calm acts of care, even deep in the earth, there is a gentle echo of humanity's tender perseverance. Let us drift back once more to Naples, moving deeper into the labyrinth where history sometimes seems to blur into legend. Among the twisting tunnels and small chambers lie curious signs marks on walls that hint at older rituals. Tiny niches where once a candle or small icon might have rested stood still clinging to the stone. Imagine stepping through a low arch into a hidden chamber where early Christians once gathered in quiet defiance, when their faith was still forbidden by Rome. The walls are close here, damp with centuries of breath, and the ceiling arches just overhead. A faint scent of old smoke seems to linger, though no fire has burned here for lifetimes. Picture a small gathering seated on rough benches or simply upon the floor, their heads bowed together in prayer, voices barely above a whisper, echoing softly in the cool hush. One holds a fragile oil lamp, its glow casting delicate shadows that dance across solemn faces. Each person wears the simple garb of a merchant, a potter, a laborer, ordinary souls, drawn to this secret solace beneath the restless city. In this very place, children may have clutched a parent's hand, wide-eyed at the mystery of whispered hymns in the darkness. A mother might have smoothed her child's hair, guiding them gently to sit still. A young man might have watched the tiny flame and felt something stir in his chest, hope, or courage, or simply a tender wonder at being here together, hidden from the world above. Pause here with them. Let the quiet wrap around you, broken only by the soft drip of water seeping through ancient stone. Feel the centuries compressed into these walls, holding countless heartbeats that once fluttered with the same fragile hopes that drift through us still. In the depths beneath Naples, faith and fear, love and gentle community found a secret refuge, leaving behind a hush that still seems to breathe if you listen closely enough. Beneath Edinburgh's cobblestones, mystery and memory often entwine so closely that it becomes hard to tell one from the other. In these shadowed closes and vaulted chambers, countless stories settled into the stones, some written down, most carried off by the silent passing of time. Imagine wandering into a narrow underpass, torch held high. The walls here bear faint scratches, as if long ago someone idly traced a pattern with a blade or nail. Perhaps they were simply marks of trade tallies kept by merchants for sacks of grain or bolts of cloth, or perhaps small symbols carved for luck to guard against the fevers and chills that too often haunted these damp quarters. In one such close, people have whispered of ghostly figures glimpsed at the edge of lantern light, a woman in a plain woolen shawl, her eyes searching, mouth parted as if to speak. Some say she still seeks her children, lost to a plague that swept these low rooms centuries ago. Whether true or only the soft invention of fearful minds, the very air seems to hold stories, curling like mist around your shoulders. Pause here and breathe in the scent of old stone, tinged with something almost sweet, like dust warmed by hidden currents of air. Listen to the gentle hush, broken only by the soft tick of dripping water far off in the darkness. Perhaps someone once stood here just as we do, hand resting on cool rock, wondering about the quiet shapes that life can leave behind. In these close quarters beneath Edinburgh, where breath once rose in visible clouds and laughter tangled with grief, history lingers in a tender, almost personal way content, to remain half-known, half-guessed, like a story told just before sleep that fades softly into dreams. In the dim, tranquil depths beneath Istanbul, mystery often wears the plain face of architecture. The cisterns and smaller vaults hold not just water, but curious adornments, hints of beliefs and symbols that drift across centuries like faint, persistent echoes. Picture walking slowly along the damp edge of a shallow pool, your lantern light skimming across silent water. Ahead stand two great stone heads, Medusa, turned on her side and upside down, serving now as humble column bases in the basilica cistern. No records explain exactly why these old pagan carvings were repurposed here, placed with such odd orientation. Some say it was simple practicality, stones scavenged from ruined temples and temples before them. Others whisper it was to dampen their ancient power, to turn away the fabled gaze. The water laps gently at their weathered brows, reflecting glimmers of light that dance over closed stone eyes. Once, perhaps, a priest or artisan laid a hand upon this carved cheek, pausing in thought or prayer, never guessing that centuries later visitors would still pause in the same hush. Beyond the famous Medusas, countless smaller mysteries sleep in these subterranean spaces, symbols carved into damp mortar, an old amphora sealed into a niche for reasons no one recalls. Perhaps once they marked a blessing for safe water, or simply the quiet pride of the masons who labored here, leaving behind a modest sign that they too existed. Stand still with these forgotten emblems. Let your breathing slow to match the ancient patience of stone and shadow. In Istanbul's underworld, the line between reverence and utility blurs beautifully, leaving a lingering calm that asks nothing more than for you to notice, just for a little while. Beneath Paris, mystery takes on a more somber grace. The catacombs are a vast, hushed labyrinth where human bones form careful patterns, rows upon rows of skulls interspersed with long bones, arranged almost as though in quiet decoration. Here, artistry and mortality intertwine so subtly that one scarcely knows whether to feel awe or gentle sorrow. Imagine moving through one of these narrow tunnels by the glow of a small lantern. Its warm circle of light touches the pale contours of skulls, each hollow gaze seeming calm, resigned to their endless watch. Along some walls you'll find plaques engraved with solemn phrases, fragments of poetry, lines from scripture, or simple, wistful observations about time and the fleeting breath of life. Pause by a particular inscription, its letters softened by moisture and age. Perhaps it says merely, "Remember, you must die." A simple truth offered not with dread, but almost tenderly, a gentle nudge to cherish each quiet moment above. Then continue your slow steps and notice where the bones are laid in small, deliberate shapes, crosses, hearts, even a kind of floral motif fashioned from femurs and vertebrae. No one recorded exactly who arranged these solemn decorations, or whether they did so in somber respect or a kind of humble artistry. Either way, the effect is strangely peaceful. Far above, Paris glitters with life music spilling from cafes, lanterns swinging on balconies, lovers whispering secrets along the Seine. But here below, the mysteries of mortality rest quietly in patient order, undisturbed. In this deep stillness even the heart seems to slow, soothed by the understanding that these silent stones and gentle reminders have always been part of what makes the living world so tender. Return once more with me beneath Naples, where not all who ventured below did so from simple necessity. While many families found shelter in these cool, shadowed chambers out of hardship, there were also spaces set apart, small vaults or chapels, where those of slightly higher standing might gather even under the earth to maintain a modest sense of dignity. Imagine a candlelit gathering deep in these tunnels, merchants of some means, perhaps minor officials or local patrons. They wear cloaks of finer wool, and a faint scent of clean linen clings to them despite the damp air. The chamber they occupy is a touch grander, its ceiling arched with more careful skill, a narrow ledge running around the wall where small oil lamps rest in orderly ranks. A low table stands at the center, bearing a jug of watered wine and simple clay cups. Though there is little luxury here, no polished marble, no glittering gold, the arrangement speaks of quiet status, of men and women accustomed to a touch more comfort than the laborers who dwell in rougher quarters nearby. Picture them speaking in low voices, discussing shipments of grain or minor disputes over land. The flicker of candlelight casts gentle halos on their composed faces, catching on modest rings or brooch that glint briefly before sinking back into shadow. Even here, beneath layers of bustling streets and noisy markets, the subtle lines of social order remain drawn. A servant boy moves quietly among them, refilling cups, his footsteps nearly soundless on the packed earthen floor. Perhaps he pauses now and then, listening to words of politics or the mention of a festival above a world bright with sun and music that he glimpses only in passing. Rest here for a time. Feel how even in these hidden places, where stone walls press close and the ceiling seems to breathe with the cool earth, humanity's soft instinct for status, for small ceremonies of belonging, continues to unfold. Here beneath Naples, the humble and the slightly elevated share the same shadowed refuge, their lives gently overlapping in the patient hush of stone. Beneath Edinburgh's streets, the subtle distinctions of class persisted even in the shadowed closes. While the poorest families crowded into damp, narrow rooms with barely a fire to warm them, there were also modest quarters set aside for tradesmen of greater, mean-skilled weavers, respected masons, or merchants whose livelihoods gave them a slightly wider margin against hardship. Imagine a larger chamber along one of these sunken closes. Its walls are still dark with soot and moisture, but the hearth here is broader, its stones neatly mortared. A woven rug, though worn, softens the hard floor near the center. On a stout table stands a pewter candlestick, rather than a crude tallow lump, its steady flame giving the room a gentle golden glow. Picture the head of the household seated at this table, reading slowly from a leather-bound ledger, lips moving just above a whisper as he traces lines of careful accounts. A young apprentice stands nearby, hands folded, waiting for instructions on the next day's deliveries. The wife moves quietly through the room, arranging a simple supper-brown bread, a modest cut of cheese, a steaming pot that smells faintly of barley and onions. Even here, children sit close together on a bench, their chatter subdued, eyes darting occasionally to their father's serious face. There is a hush of mild respect, a small ceremony that sets this family as evening apart from the rougher noise of the alleys outside. Listen to the soft clink of pewter against wood, the brief rustle of pages turning, the faint sigh as the apprentice is dismissed for the night. Outside their sturdy door, the close carries on voices calling, footsteps splashing through shallow puddles, but within these walls there lingers a sense of quiet order, a dignity preserved even in the low embrace of stone. Pause here with them. Let this subtle texture of life sink in, not grand, not lavish, yet gently layered with small privileges that set these lives slightly apart from their poorer neighbors, even beneath Edinburgh's ancient, rain-washed streets. Deep beneath Istanbul's busy quarters, where merchants haggle over bolts of silk and trays of bright spices, subtle lines of class once reached even into the cool shadows of the cisterns and hidden vaults. While much of the underground was purely functional, designed to cradle water and store goods, there were chambers maintained by wealthier guilds or influential households, set apart by small signs of careful stewardship. Imagine stepping through a low stone arch into one such chamber. The air here is not merely damp. It carries a faint trace of sweet oil and old incense, lingering from quiet gatherings once held by respected merchants or minor officials. Along the walls stand niches that hold fine amphorae, their clay surfaces painted with delicate, curling motifs, stylized leaves, slender birds in mid-flight. A pair of sturdy wooden chests rests under a carved lintel, iron-banded, and bearing faint impressions where seals were once pressed in wax. Perhaps these held spices or rolls of precious fabric stored here against the city's heat. Or perhaps they guarded documents, ledgers of trade agreements, written promises of future caravans threading their way across Anatolia toward distant ports. Picture a small group gathered here in the soft glow of hanging lamps. Their robes are simply cut but of finer linen, the dyes deeper and more even than those worn by common porters above. They speak in low, measured tones, voices muffled by the close space. A servant moves carefully from one to another, offering a jug of water drawn fresh from the cistern, its surface catching lamplight in tiny starbursts. Pause here, feeling the gentle press of cool stone all around. Notice how even in these hidden places far from sunlight and market, clamor the subtle dance of status and privilege continues, expressed not in gold or grandeur but in small telling details. The finer weave of a sleeve, the quiet expectation of service, the unhurried way these men confer. Above, Istanbul whirls in bright commotion. Down here, in patient shadows, another sort of life unfolds, measured, deliberate, softly echoing with the centuries-old murmur of small powers held discreetly, even beneath the earth. Beneath Paris, even within the solemn embrace of the catacombs, faint traces of social distinctions found quiet expression. Though most who now rest there are long equal in death, there were times when the living passed through these shadowed corridors with small, telling differences that marked who they had been above. Imagine a modest procession moving carefully through the low tunnels, lanterns held aloft to guide each cautious step. At its head walks a man clad in a dark coat of fine wool, its collar brushed and cuffs just slightly frayed, an undertaker or minor city official overseeing the careful placement of remains. Behind him follow two assistants bearing modest brass lamps, their light pooling on skulls stacked with eerie precision. From a short distance comes the faint scrape of a polished boot over loose stone, different from the heavier, broader shoes worn by common laborers. Perhaps another attendant carries a ledger bound in leather, stopping now and then to jot a note with quiet deliberation, recording which old cemetery yielded this latest gathering of bones to be laid in ordered repose. Notice the way they pause now and then, speaking in low voices, discussing not only the solemn duty at hand, but the city's small intrigues above. A baker's new price for bread, a magistrate's daughter soon to be married. Even here, beneath the bright streets of Paris, the subtle nuances of station drift like faint perfumes, recognized without words. Linger with them in this hush. Feel the way the air settles cool and dry on the skin, how the lantern light breathes across carefully arranged femurs and skulls, catching on faint etchings left by earlier workers. Though death has long leveled all who rest here, the living once carried their gentle hierarchies even into these shadowed aisles, leaving behind a soft echo of a world forever concerned with quiet distinctions. Above, Paris continues in a swirl of bright lamps and laughter, but here under its weight, class and ceremony become delicate shadows present, yet hushed by the slow, patient calm of the earth. Now we emerge slowly from these shadowed places, carrying with us the gentle weight of countless lives lived quietly beneath the ground. We have wandered through Naples, Edinburgh, Istanbul, and Paris, moving softly among stone corridors and vaulted chambers, pausing where humble footsteps once fell and small, tender moments unfolded out of sight of sun and sky. Above these hidden worlds, life continues in its bright and busy way. Streets bustle with voices and laughter, lamps glow in warm windows, and the air hums with the ordinary joys and small struggles of today. But beneath it all rests this patient layering of time whispers of families gathered around modest hearths, merchants quietly conferring over trade, workers tending to damp pipes or solemn arrangements of the dead. If you listen closely, perhaps you can still hear their faint echoes, not demanding to be remembered, only lingering with a soft courtesy that honors both their passing and your gentle attention. These underground cities are more than hollow spaces. They are tender archives of human persistence, each chamber holding a breath of sorrow, of hope, of simple daily care. So rest now, knowing that beneath every step we take stretches a deep foundation of countless quiet lives, stacked like gentle pages in a book too vast to read in one sitting. Their stories drift up to meet us in small ways, a scent of cool stone, the hush of a damp passage, the imagined creak of a cart far below. May these calm reflections ease your own thoughts tonight, allowing them to settle softly like dust upon old stones. In this shared quiet, stretched across centuries, find a slow, soothing comfort, and drift gently into sleep.